Welcome to What Could Have Been, a segment where I take a look at a film's deleted scenes and analyze the effect they could have had on the film if they were left in the final cut. Today's subject, Pacific Rim. Directed by Guillermo del Toro, trailers led me to expect an atypical movie where giant robots and giant monsters fight each other. Treated with too simple a perspective, those can turn out bland and forgettable, or even painful. But Pacific Rim gave due diligence to its characters and concepts beyond what I expected, which made it way more enjoyable to watch. If you'd like to hear my overall thoughts on the movie, I'll link Casual Reviews number 11 in the description and the video's end screen. Now before we get to the deleted scenes, plot dump. A rift opens up in the Pacific Ocean from which giant monsters known as kaiju emerge and wreak havoc on Earth. In response, the world's leaders unite to create Jaegers, giant mechs with 2 pilots, to battle against them. Scene 1. The Wall of Life and Rations. Raleigh Beckett is working on the Continental Wall, a project meant to keep attacking kaiju at bay. He slips down and approaches the window to get his payment, and one of his co-workers engages him in small talk.
Look at this. What a feast. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The dinner pack's my favorite.
Personality, I guess. Also, the movie describing how the workers are paid could serve as insight into what life is like for people making their living this way.
The dinner pack's my favorite. You add a little water to that, the meat comes to life. They call it dry meat, but it's only dry if you don't add water, right?
Now, as adequately depressing a description that is for what it's like to be working on the wall, the guy delivering the information isn't exactly a paragon of personality, and the information he's relaying to us is only relevant for this casual conversation. There are also a few moments where Raleigh's position is defined by other characters, namely when Marshal Pentecost approaches him at this construction site.
The world is coming to an end. So where would you rather die? Here? Or in a Jaeger?
Put plainly, there's nothing in this scene that adds to the movie in a meaningful way. Scene 2. Excuse Me. This is an extension of the scene that introduces Doctors Newt Geisler and Herman Gottlieb, 2 scientists who provide exposition. Newt is shown to be fascinated by the inner workings of the kaiju.
I study them, and unlike most people, I want to see one alive, and up close one day.
Trust me, you don't want to.
What was deleted is Newt's short tirade against Raleigh.
Excuse me, guy? The kaiju are the most immense, complex living entities ever to walk the earth, and guys like you don't know anything about them. See, the way I see it is if you want to stop them, you have to understand them.
The scene as presented in the final cut gives us an impression about Newt's fascination with the kaiju. The deleted scene delves a little further into his feelings on the matter. It presents a classic dichotomy, the soldier who's seen the worst of the war and wants the enemy destroyed, against the scientist who believes that learning more about the enemy will provide valuable information. Best of all, it's a pretty short extension, so it wouldn't have held the film up for too long. I would regard the removal of this moment as trimming the fat. Kaiju science is a major plot point, so Newt's fascination is consistently on display. And if we're already going to see that, then Newt's character doesn't stand to benefit very much from a few seconds of passionate ranting. Furthermore, the extra dialogue affects the scene in a crucial way. In the final cut, Newt and Raleigh express their points concisely.
I want to see one alive, and up close one day.
Trust me, you don't want to.
In the deleted scene, Newt takes it the extra mile by criticizing Raleigh for being narrow-minded.
If you want to stop them, you have to understand them.
Or we could just blow them to pieces.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, why didn't I think of that? Let's just blow them to chunks. It's great.
But he is also berating a veteran whose brother was killed in combat, a death Raleigh could feel very strongly because Jaeger pilots are mentally connected.
I was still connected to my brother when he died. I can't go through that again, man. I'm sorry.
This makes Newt come across not only as whiny, but kind of a jerk. And generally, he's a very enjoyable character, so cutting this might have actually saved his image a bit. Lastly, both characters share the goal of defeating the kaiju, so this argument doesn't introduce lasting conflict. Newt and Raleigh don't even share another personal conversation the rest of the movie. This moment of conflict adds little to the story because it doesn't have a lasting impact and there's no payoff for it later in the movie. As such, it's very easy to justify cutting it. Scene 3. Theft. Newt breaks into a waste area for spare parts to try building a machine that will allow the user to drift with a kaiju brain. The best pro I can think of is that sometimes science nerds like to see the pieces of the experiment before it's assembled. And I'm not knocking that. After all,
science rules.
It's also short, doesn't hold the movie up for very long. Why not? Part of the film editing process is trimming those few non-essential seconds here and there in order to improve the movie's focus on its main elements. This makes the difference between movies that are well-paced and the movies that go on just a little too long. We see Newt working with this stuff later, and it's obviously spare parts. And Dr. Gottlieb directly mentions this factor.
Newton created a neural bridge from garbage and drifted with a kaiju.
We don't need to see Newt picking through the garbage. In this case, acknowledgement is information enough. On top of that, the movie already puts Newt in a bit of a bad light by the fact that this venture wasn't approved by Pentecost.
The neural surge would be too much for the human brain.
I agree.
I don't agree.
Gottlieb, I'd like your data on my desk ASAP.
No, but his is so...
Thank you, Newt.
And think about it. If this and the moment where Newt berated Raleigh were both included in the final cut, his character would have a pretty dubious image at this point. We don't need a black mark on this character over stealing garbage. Besides, his intentions are good, so I figure most viewers wouldn't judge him harshly for it anyways. In short, this scene is both pointless and detrimental to the character it's about, so the cutting room floor is a great place for it. Scene 4. Catch you in the drift, Dad. Hercules and Chuck Hansen, father-son pilots of the Stryker Eureka, have a brief argument about their personal relationship.
You're a great ranger. Is that what you want to hear? Everybody knows that.
What more do you want me to be?
A better person!
You know what? At least you can't blame yourself. Because you didn't raise me to be anything.
The emotional energy of this scene is pretty good. Throughout the movie, we see and hear that these two make a good team, but as father and son, they're shown to occasionally butt heads. This scene presents a more intense clash between them.
The only reason you and I even speak anymore, old man, is because we're drift compatible. You know what? We don't even need to speak at all. I'll catch you in the drift, Dad.
It also helps to think of this as a preface to the last time these characters see each other face to face.
When you drift for someone, you feel like there's nothing to talk about. I just don't want to regret all the things that I never said out loud.
I know them all. I always have.
Even without the argument scene, the performances given here make this a pretty solid emotional moment all on its own. But if we include this argument earlier on, this goodbye becomes more heartfelt, acknowledges a harsh truth from their argument, and it allows a moment of forgiveness before Chuck goes on to sacrifice himself in the climax.
Well, my father always said, he said if you have the shot, you take it. It was a pleasure, sir.
Personal conflict is good for characters, and it makes the act of making amends even stronger. Emotionally, not too shabby. The contrast between the heartfelt words and the harsh words might be just a little bit too strong. In families, harsh arguments can be followed by reconciliation without the passage of much time, so that aspect of it is not unrealistic. But the story's main focus isn't on those characters, so I'm not sure a moment this serious involving them is warranted. Chuck is shown to be arrogant and bullheaded, and he displays pointed animosity towards Raleigh and Mako.
Just do us all a favor and disappear. It's the only thing you're good at.
Stop now.
Yeah, that's right. You just hold back your little girlfriend. One of you bitches needs a leash.
Herc is the one often shown having to rein him in.
Hey, this is over! You're a ranger, for Christ's sake! Why don't you start acting like one?
I just don't think there's enough in the movie to go off of that would escalate their conflict all the way to this.
What more do you want me to be?
A better person!
A better person.
These characters having this argument is not unbelievable, but not enough time was given in the movie to their relationship to properly build up to a moment like this.
Now, after Mum died, I spent more time with these machines than I ever did with you.
It's good to encourage emotional investment in supporting characters. But because it lacks that buildup, watching this scene is like hearing a heated argument between two of your distant relatives. You feel bad that they're fighting, but you mostly feel awkward to be listening to it at all because you don't know enough about them to fully understand it. Lastly, this scene is almost a full minute and a half, longer than any of the other deleted scenes. If it was going to hold up the movie for that long, it needed to be more emotionally crucial as far as the bigger picture was concerned. Alas, it wasn't.
I'm gonna drop you like a sack of kaiju shit.
Ordinarily, this would be the end because that's every deleted scene on the bonus disc of my DVD. But while browsing Tumblr, I came across knowledge about another deleted scene, and I think it's one worth sharing. Scene 5, The Marshal's Scars. In the final cut, we see Raleigh operate a Jaeger alone after his brother is killed, and we learn that Pentecost has done the same. We're shown Raleigh's scars from that incident, and we see the Marshal taking some kind of pill every time his nose bleeds, hinting at the damage he sustained. A cut segment shows that Pentecost is even more seriously scarred than Raleigh. As I said, there are signs throughout the movie that Pentecost has been damaged by his experiences. Even with the declaration that he would die if he piloted a Jaeger again, it would have rounded things out to show us the extent of that damage. It might have even been a good idea to show this scene shortly before he walks out in front of everybody in a battle suit. Raleigh introduced us to that kind of damage, so seeing scars on Pentecost would allow the audience to compare levels of damage, realize how strong he had to have been to survive that, and elevate the seriousness of the sacrifice he's ready to make. Lastly, I don't think it would be fully right for me to use this Tumblr post as a reference without bringing attention to its main point. And that would be that Idris Elba is shirtless in this deleted scene. Analyzing physical attractiveness has never been an interest of mine, but based on that post, I'm willing to bet that there are people out there who would have been very happy to see this in the movie. Looked at from the right angle, this scene adds greater meaning to the Marshal's disposition and his decisions. Looked at from the other angle, a little fan service never really hurt anybody. So why not include this scene? Regardless of anyone's feelings about Idris Elba's physical attractiveness, the bigger picture has to be recognized. We saw Raleigh's scars, so we don't really need to see the Marshal's. We're told about what he's done, and the bloody nose hints at the damage he sustained, so we don't need more physical evidence of that. And remember what I said about the moment where he steps out in his battlesuit? Putting this shortly before that scene would take some thunder away from that moment. Except we see the battlesuit in the trailer, so it's not like it was much of a surprise to begin with.
Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
My research suggests that this scene was actually cut from earlier on in the movie though, and was related to the Marshal's reluctance in allowing Mako to become a Jaeger pilot. If true, the other purposes I mentioned in the pros section could still be served. But it bears repeating that without this scene, the movie already has all the information that we need to know. Would it be worth it to put in this scene just for fan service? I am not the right person to ask. So those were the deleted scenes from Pacific Rim. I figured there'd be more, given Del Toro's claim that there would be 30 minutes of them, but I digress. Based on what I had to work with, was there anything that I felt should have remained in the final cut? I'm leaning towards no. Deleted scenes are interesting to watch, but most of the time there are good reasons for them being cut. For one, I have a script of pros and cons, and the cons sections were generally longer. But more importantly, most of the scenes I discussed today were just filled with unnecessary information. And usually I expect character-centric deleted scenes to add valuable information about characters. In the case of this, the cuts may have actually saved Newt's integrity as a fairly decent human being by cutting the parts that made him look like a jerk. That said, I would have been okay with including the Marshal's scars. It's a little fan service with a layer of information that's nice to know, even if not entirely necessary. If nothing else, I wish that scene was included on the bonus disc of the DVD. Talking about the idea of it is nice and all, but it would have been helpful to see how that scene would have been presented to us. The Hansen team's argument also has some merit for inclusion. The performances in their goodbye scene were really good, and I think their argument is a good precursor to instigate them showing their more tender emotions later on. And that concludes my thoughts for this video. If you want to see me tackle another film's deleted scenes, leave a comment below. This is Detective Steve. Thank you for watching.